Hello again! I am back and I just realized that I stole this sweater from my friend in college many years ago. So if you're watching this video and you want your sweater back, come find me. Alright, so what is this video today? So today we're going to be talking about how to find time to work on your tabletop RPG or your book or your art piece, like any sort of passion project that you might have, but we are specifically focusing on TTRPGs just because that's what I'm most familiar with. So if you have a day job, or if you're a parent, or you have a hectic schedule, maybe with school or something like that, then it's probably going to be really hard to find time to work on your tabletop RPG. And so today I'm going to give you a few tips on what has helped for me and what I think might be helpful for you if you're looking for some ways to carve out that time in your schedule. And again, like with anything, please take this with a grain of salt. Not all of the stuff is going to be useful to everyone. Some of the stuff has been useful for me, and that's why I'm talking about it. But if it's not useful for you, then just don't use it. Do something else, like do something completely different. And definitely do experiment and see what works best for you. Some of these tips might be helpful, some of them might not be. So the first thing I like to do when it comes to tackling a large project is breaking that project down into smaller, bite-sized chunks. And everyone talks about this all the time, where it's just like, you have a big thing, we'll break it down into smaller pieces, and then from those small pieces break it down into even more smaller pieces. And what does that mean when it comes to a tabletop RPG? So for me, I think that the biggest thing is that when you think about a project like a tabletop RPG, it's like so big and so like overwhelming and scary. But what you could do is you could take that TTRPG and then break it down into lore and mechanics, and from there sort of break that down even further. So you have your lore side, you have your mechanic side, and then you have like all this other stuff. Obviously, like, you know, in the mechanics, you might write some lore stuff. In the lore stuff, you might write some mechanic stuff. Like those two things are going to mix and match. But now for the time being, just like, you know, breaking them down into those two sections, and then from those two sections, break it down even further. So maybe under mechanics, you want to break it down into dice and challenges and character creation. And then from there, say for example, you have character creation as one of the things that you want to tackle. That's already like a really large thing. So under character creation, you might want to break it down even further. So what goes under character creation? So you have your character sheet, right? So what's going to go onto that sheet? Think about all the things that might go onto the character sheet. And then from there, pick out all the spots that you want to expand on in the book itself. So say for example, there is a section called skill. And so for skill, maybe you want to, you know, talk a little bit about like, what does this mean in the book, and then give some examples of skills. So that already is a task that you could tackle. So describing what the skills are, what does it mean, and how many skills are there that could be, you know, chosen from. Describing what the task is really important, because the more detailed it is, the more that you can understand what you're about to do. So taking that skill example again, instead of saying, I'm just gonna make some skills, or I'm just gonna make a section on skills, asking yourself, what are the different things that are going to go under the skill section? So what am I going to have as an introduction? How do I explain what the skills are to a person who's going to be reading this? What are the different skills that might be involved? You know, how does it impact the rest of gameplay? That kind of thing. And so once you have these questions down, each of those questions will be a different task, and therefore you sort of have like a task list that you're going to be building out for yourself. And it's a lot more manageable having these tasks versus like having this huge thing that you don't know how to really tackle or talk about. Because like if I just told you, like, you know, do some stuff about skills, that's just like so ambiguous, you just don't really know how to deal with it. Like, where do you even start? Now that you have tasks and questions laid out for you so that you know what you're going to be working on, you're going to assign those tasks and questions to specific time blocks, maybe through you know, a course of a week or 2 weeks, or however long you want to work on this thing. Usually what I like to do is I like to assign 2 tasks per day. For me personally, I don't like to go over 2 hours a day, because I find that I get burnt out really easily on a project if I just like do everything all at once. So what I end up doing is I take on maybe like an hour a day per project. And it's not gonna be every day for like the entirety of the project, right? It's gonna be probably like maybe like 3 or 4 times a week. So 3 or 4 hours out of that week, I'm gonna be working on those specific tasks and tackling those questions. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but when I have all of these things laid out in front of me and I know exactly what I'm doing for that day, then it's easier for me to focus and get the thing done. And over time, the more things that you get done off of your checklist, the more it's going to become like a thing. Like it doesn't feel like it when you're working on the thing, but at the very end, you're going to see this project and you're going to be like, oh wow, like I made a whole thing. And having that in place versus just like working on whatever you feel like for whatever period of time, like 3 hours or whatever. Like it does work for some people, but for me, like I can't do that. Like my motivation type is specifically for time blocking and like breaking things down into pieces. So my battery just died and I really hope that I just caught all of that footage because I would be really upset. But going back to what I was saying, everyone's gonna have different ways of working. For me specifically, I like having everything outlined. I like having everything time blocked. I like having, you know, questions that I'm gonna be answering that are very specific so that I know what I'm doing. Instead of people who are more like pantsers, like that's what they call it, right? Like the writers who are either like outliners or pantsers who just like write. Like I need everything outlined so that's like the most effective use of my time, but not everyone works like this. So please keep that in mind. If it doesn't work for you, if it's, you know, draining your energy, then it might be more effective to work in a different way. All right, and finally, definitely pacing yourself and having buffer time is something that I found invaluable because I get so upset at myself when I time block some stuff and I don't complete the thing within that time block. So making sure that instead of having like an hour to work on the thing, maybe having a time block of 2 hours and telling myself I'm only gonna work on this one checklist item today and that is it. And feeling really good about, you know, being able to complete that within the hour or like an hour and a half has been so good. Like that's just been like really good for my mental health. And knowing that progress, even though it does feel like it's really slow and, you know, you're maybe only making like, I don't know, 1% or 2% progress a day on this project. It seems like it's really small right now, but in the long run, when you're like looking back at all the stuff that you've done, you'll look back and be like, wow, like I'm really impressed with all this work that I've done. Something I've also had to learn over the course of making all of these projects is that breaks are actually a really good thing. Like they're not a waste of time. That's something I'm still learning, but like breaks are really good because they actually help you rest. And if you don't rest, then you'll get burnt out quicker and then you're not gonna be able to produce the thing that you wanna produce and you're not gonna be happy with like the end result. Whereas if you actually took breaks and, you know, did some stuff that wasn't related to the game at all or the project or whatever you're working on and just like, I don't know, went for a walk or watched some TV or like did something mindless for, you know, a few hours or a day or whatever, stay off social media. Rest time is actually really productive because it gives you more energy for later on when you want to go back to doing the thing that you love doing. So those are just some tips that I found that were helpful for me when it comes to figuring out the time to work on a project and trying to make sure that I get the thing done while not burning myself out. And I know that everything that I've talked about with, you know, breaking down a project into smaller bite-sized pieces is like agile thinking. And so I might make a video about it. Basically, you know, just go through my process so that you can understand how it looks for me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos on the TTRPG industry. Thanks, bye!